All right. Welcome to the Jump Seat. This is episode 3 today. Hope you guys are doing good. Today we're going to just a weekly spotlight bringing you key industry thought leaders, subject matter experts, and next gen insights affecting you and your department. Hosted by two Jump Seat firemen with the occasional look behind the scenes at 200 plus years of fire service tradition, design, and manufacturing of today's products. My name is John Martins, and I'm joined here with my co host David Durstein. To kick
John, thank you.
You bet. Thanks for joining us. To kick things off today, let's touch base on a couple things happening in the industry. David, I'll turn it over to you to start.
Yeah, I introduced myself a couple weeks ago, and my background's been in the fire service for many years, as a not only as a firefighter, but also, selling and educating in the industry as a whole. But my ties go back even before then. So I'm four generations in my family. I joined the volunteer fire department in college. And ironically, I met a really good friend of mine to this day in college, and we became college roommates. And ironically, he actually was just in the news this week, which was actually really kind of cool for me to kind of relate. But his name's Harry Sutphin, and he's part of the Sutphin family, building Sutphin fire apparatus. But the cool thing there was he made the news here in Ohio. He sold a ladder truck here recently and just did delivery last week to Bethesda, Ohio. It's a small town in southeastern Ohio. And really the cool thing about it was the news did a big story because who knew that Harry would repeat history, and that his great grandfather actually delivered a truck, and his great grandfather's his namesake. So it was Harry Sutphin Sr. 93 years ago, he delivered a Sutphin engine to them. And so
Wow.
now, 93 years later, Harry, the great grandson, delivers a ladder truck to the same city. So kind of a really cool thing, and a tie to, not only the relationship I have with Harry, and it's a cool tie that I had to that article, but I think it's a real attribute to the history of the fire service and how strong it is, and not just a specific brand or name. There's many, and even family lineages and generations as firefighters, as it is in my family, but also as in the sale and manufacture of fire trucks, as it was for Harry and his family. So really kind of a cool thing, and some stuff in the news this
Yeah,
week. So I don't know, John, what do you got?
that's great. And real quick, for those who don't know, how far away is that from the factory there in Worcester where we build all our Akron
Oh,
products?
yeah, from the Akron Brass factory to Bethesda, it's probably about I don't know, 2 hours, 2.5 hour maybe
Okay,
run. So, but
cool.
yeah, it's a great little Ohio town
Yeah,
down there in southeastern Ohio.
super. Yeah, thanks. I'm not from Ohio, so I wasn't sure. Um, Kind of switching to the next piece here, I was going to touch base on something that I actually stumbled across accidentally, but it ended up being really valuable. I was on fire engineering here recently, and this has been out a few weeks, but I found a webcast called Mastering Leadership and Succession Planning for the Next Generation. And
I think I
it
saw
was,
that. Was that Bobby Halton doing
yep,
that?
hosted by Chief Halton and
Yeah.
retired Chief Castros, founder of TrainedFirefighters.com. And of course, it caught my attention. Obviously, we have a lot of generations in the fire service at this point, and that presents a lot of advantages, some challenges, and what I liked most about it was, I don't know, it was just a good, really good blend of fire-based leadership, great info, and then one of my favorite parts was his discussion just on how, yes, we still have some baby boomers, we have a fair amount of Gen X. He talks a little about Gen Y, and then obviously the millennials. They're growing by the day, right? There's more and more of them driving these trucks, running these calls, making decisions now. And yeah, it was just good. It touches base kind of on all things from, cooking, cleaning, training in the station. Just you want to be the firefighter that can hold all these different generations together, because at the end of the day, that's the firehouse right now, and that's what makes a crew a family. So anyway, for anybody who hasn't seen it, check it out. It's on fireengineering.com. So
Hey, that's actually kind of cool. I actually, I think I saw some post events on social media about that. I probably should go back and watch it, but
yep,
it's an interesting piece on the dynamic and the change in the firehouse. I know I've got to see it myself from that young new kid on the block, per se, to now I'm the middle-aged, semi-old guy, which is horrible to think about, right? But unfortunately, that's the realities, and
yeah,
just the dynamics changes in the firehouse with the younger generation as well. It's
yeah,
definitely changing time. I'll check that one out. Thanks, John.
Yeah, you bet. Well, we'll keep moving through things here and really get to the meat and potatoes of this. So what we're going to talk about today is pretty interesting. In the jump seat, we're going to be talking about water flow, your department setup, a few important things to keep in mind, and it is a big part of what we do. Water kills fire. We all know that, but there's a lot that goes into that. So joining with me today is Dave Hradek of Akron Brass, and he's going to discuss some ideas and concepts to maximize your department's performance, as well as considerations for your next hose and nozzle purchases. Dave's been with Akron Brass since 2007, and we just talked about it, and we think that he just hit his 13-year mark, like either today or this week or something like that. So way to go, Dave. It's awesome. You have a lot of information, and we can't wait to hear about it. So without further ado, David, you're in the jump seat. How are you, man?
Sweet. I'm doing good. I hope you guys are. Yeah, I think you were a millennial. Dave, I don't think you hit that, though, unfortunately. So I think, John, you and I are in that boat. So yeah. It could be clarified as a good or a bad thing. I'm not sure which.
I do fall into the extra category. So, okay. Hold it against me here.
I'm also a little disappointed in my jump seat here. This is, I don't know if my office chair is as comfortable as a jump seat. I think I might be rather be in that right now.
Well, I'll tell you what.
No, so we're talking about some hose and nozzle pairing, right? And it's really, really gets me energized to talk about that with different fire departments, because each fire department, as you guys know, run things differently. So I think I've kind of narrowed it down to about 4 different bullet points that I would say are what a fire department should look at when evaluating hose and nozzles. First off, the most important is, what are you trying to accomplish? What does that mean? Is it, NFPA? Are you following that? Are you not? I'm in North Carolina. You may not be. It's a recommendation. So does anybody then, on top of that, know what NFPA 1962 is?
I'd say go ahead and bring us up to speed, particularly for our listeners.
I don't want to put you to sleep, but it is more of it's a great read, exhilarating if you're getting ready for bed. But 1962 is basically telling you about hose and nozzles and testing nozzles and hose. So what do you got to do every year with your hose? You test it. Guess what you get to do now with hose and nozzles, where you know it or not. This happened a few years ago. But now you get to test your nozzles and appliances. So pressure testing, flow testing, that kind of thing. So you kind of need some flow meters, some pressure gauges that go down that road there. And we can help you with that. The next piece of it is, what nozzle? And, what nozzle do you have? You'd be surprised on how many people don't know what they've got on the end of their line. It could, it's one of those things, in my opinion, that everybody thinks air packs and turnout gear, but what are you taking into a fire with you every single time? And it's one of those things that's like abused on a regular basis. Nobody cleans it, cares for it, just kind of expected to work, right? Everything needs a little bit of TLC no matter what. So I would suggest, just wash them, just keep an eye on what you have on the end of the line. So, and then is it an adjustable gallonage nozzle? Is it a fixed orifice nozzle? Is it a smooth bore? What types of pressures do you need on any of those? And then what kind of flow are you actually looking to accomplish with that? So back to your NFPA, are you looking at 300 GPM on a single 2.5? Or is it 2 3/4 where you're looking at 150? So what does that flow equate to? And your pump discharge pressure as well. And then going into the difference of hoses. Hoses aren't just hoses anymore. Everybody thinks that a hose is a hose. And, hopefully the hose guys like me for saying this, because I thought the same thing. But now seeing the science that's actually invested in these hoses, it's pretty crazy to see the technology that's actually there. It's not just a hose anymore, just like a nozzle. And then the last one, whether you like it or not, most people don't want to hear it if you're on the fire ground, is your budget. What is it? You may not want, you don't want to hear it. You think there's unlimited funds coming in, but what is it and how are you going to accomplish the task of evaluating that hose and that nozzle? So just kind of to back up now on top of that, do you guys any questions on that or any thoughts?
I mean, you threw a lot of stuff out there, David, really quick. And, I guess one of the things I would throw maybe to you is, I think a lot of people think about nozzles being all the same or, hey, I just pick it up, I need to use it, right? So I think there's also a misconception that everybody thinks too that, hey, a smoothbore is only a 50 PSI tool and a fog nozzle or a combination type nozzle is 100 PSI nozzle. I mean, I know there's differences in pressures, but maybe what are your thoughts on that? And maybe you can elaborate to our users. Are there differences in pressures or even the nozzles and how they perform?
Great segue, because that's where I was kind of going next with, when you go back and you look at that nozzle and what are you trying to accomplish with that nozzle? Is it a high pressure nozzle? Is it a medium pressure or is it a low pressure? A high pressure being 100 PSI, a medium pressure being about 75 PSI, and then a low pressure being 50. Now you kind of have to balance these out with what hose you have. So a high pressure hose is going to work with or a high pressure nozzle is going to work with any hose essentially. But a low pressure nozzle is not going to work with just any hose. You're going to have to look at the build of that hose. You're going to look at what diameter is it, your inner diameter, what it actually is. And then what is the makeup of that on the inside? Is it a rubber liner? Is it an EPDM liner? Those kinds of things will affect what you're looking at on the fire ground with kinks, because you're all familiar with, if you open a nozzle and if you have it over pressurized, you're going for a ride. Or if you under pressurize it, and this is the thing that makes me the most nervous when I'm on the fire ground and conducting a demo or flowing water, is if you're running a lower grade hose that's really designed for the higher pressure nozzle and you run it at a low PSI, you're going to get that kickback. And it's usually going to go either to your face or it's going to go somewhere else and it's going to whip around. And so everybody hears the term nozzle whip. It makes me crazy because I think it's more, I have to blame the hose people for that. Because it does have something to do with, it's almost playing whack-a-mole with kinks. Where is that hose going to kink? And you grab there and it's going to kink somewhere else. So going back to your initial question though on nozzles is, a smoothbore, you want to design it, it's a 50 PSI, right? And then all of a sudden, maybe you can run a low pressure nozzle, which may be a fixed orifice at 50 PSI as well. So you can kind of match your pressures and standardize. So you could have a smoothbore and a fog. And I've seen a lot of people going that direction, whether it's a break apart or whether it's just a smoothbore and a fog. And you just, you pick your poison, because we all know, if you're a fog or a smoothbore guy, it's like a Ford or Chevy guy or Dodge guy, whatever you want to talk about there.
Well, I think they have to keep in mind too, at 2 p.m. on the training pad, when we do all this, it's one thing. At 2 a.m, when it's snowing or raining or whatever it's doing, we got to be able to do this right. And simplicity seems to be a pretty neat thing I'm seeing. Let's not overcomplicate this. Let's think simple and let's think consistent, so that whether it's 2A or 2P, the same thing is happening, right? Because
exactly, and that's a huge part of it is standardization. A lot of standardization will help going forward. And so when you're standardizing, that's also going to help out in your training, because when you're talking, why do you want to go to low pressure? The reason that people are looking at low pressure is because they want to reduce their reaction force. And ultimately, you can save, by a 150 at 100, your rule of thumb, so 150 gallons a minute at 100 PSI, you're looking at about 75 pounds of reaction force. Cut in half is your rule of thumb there. The formula is a little different. You guys can feel free to see the formula later on. But when you're talking about a 75 PSI nozzle, you're looking at about 66 pounds of reaction force. And then you go down to about a 150 at 50, you're looking at 54 pounds. So you can see you're saving 20 pounds of reaction force. And when you're puny like me, that helps out quite a bit. But if you do go to that lower pressure, you have to also compensate for the hose, because you will then have a lot more susceptibility to kinking. So training then. Are you going to chase kinks, or are you not going to chase kinks? How many people do you guys typically have on an engine? I see 3, 4, sometimes 2 volunteers. So what does your department look like, in your physical makeup? And that's going to affect your flow and your pressures. And then, again, back to your budget that you don't want to hear about. But if you're not going to pay for the higher grade hose, which that higher grade hose is more kink resistant, nothing's kink proof. But if you can pay for that, great. But if you can't, then if you buy a low pressure nozzle, you're going to hate me. You're going to call me up and tell me I don't like this. And you're going to call the hose person and they're not going to like it. So there's going to be some issues when you do that. So that's why it's very important to kind of match and look at what you're trying to flow. So from 150 GPM, is that good? Or 185 or maybe 200? What can you actually hang on to? And then from that reaction force, that manpower, because you're looking at, like, when you go back to who's on the engine, if you only have 2 people, realistically, in the real world, nobody wants to say it, but who's going to be on the line? You're going to have one person on the line for how long until backup arrives? Sometimes maybe never. I know, David, I was on that volunteer department back in the day, and who's coming?
Yeah, you're right. Those daytime runs, we have limited manpower. It really can play havoc on them from time to time there. One of the things I want to touch back on, you were saying there was there, you kind of mentioned there was maybe bad hose. Is there bad hose?
So there's not bad hose, not at all. No, there's just different hoses are made for different applications, just like nozzles. So when you're looking at a hose, the standard run-of-the-mill hose that you're paying maybe $100 a stick for, that's not bad hose. It's designed most likely for 100 psi nozzle though, so it's not really used for a 50 psi nozzle. Whereas when you pay for a higher grade hose through the different brands that are out there and the higher kink resistance, so there's 1.75 exact hose, or there's a 1.78 or maybe a 1.88 inch diameter hose. That will affect your friction loss, but it'll also affect your budget as well, because when you go up to those higher flows and you want a less kink resistant hose, or more kink resistant hose, you're gonna pay for it, and it's gonna be probably over $200 a stick at that point in time. So how much hose do you need? And then that kind of adds up there.
One thing too, I'll chime in on. I've been seeing this during nozzle demos when you guys are out in the field. It's really neat. If you ever have a chance to kink up a hose that's made for lower pressure versus one that's not, and see the actual GPM with a good flow meter, that can provide some really interesting numbers. Meaning, a kink on a low pressure hose versus a non-low pressure hose, you are going to see a lot of difference in flow while kinked, because that could happen, right? So just a thought out in the field when you're doing demos or having reps in, just have them check that. That's really good stuff to get data on as well.
And to go on that, I mean, you're also looking at, we're doing this in the field, right? We're not in a closed environment. So what are the tools that you're using to test this? And so are you using a digital flow meter? Are you using line gauges and a pitot gauge? Those are great tools to have. And are you going to get exact? Probably not. You're going to get close, because also your pump, your piping in your truck, that's going to affect your friction loss. So, those are other things that can kind of affect what is your pump discharge really ultimately need to be. And if you're trying to standardize, you could be at 110 PDP, across the board for 200 foot line, and you're flowing, 185 gallons a minute. Great. Well, that may not work for the next department. You may need something different. So it all comes down to, again, of almost your manpower and what can that, one person flow and then your budget again. So what is that? And, everybody wants to do things like maybe their neighbor or total opposite than their neighbor. But really it comes down to what is your department good at and how much training do you do? Realistic, it's, once a week maybe, or once a month maybe. I know when I was back on the volunteer department in Ohio, there was, we have 40 people on a roster, and you get for training, you get maybe 10, 15 people. If you're lucky, if you throw food involved, then you get another like 20. You might get 20. Who knows? But those are your the people that are coming, and then the tones drop for a structure fire, and you look at the person next to you, and you're like, "Who are you? Where'd you come from again?" So if you're trying to standardize, you want to make it for everyone. I think there was also a resource, somebody told me one time too, is that you have your A and B team, and then you have your A, B, and C team. A is always going to get it. B is going to be there, most of the time. And C, those are the ones you really got to plan around. So that's some important thought to take home with you.
So David, I guess when I kind of listen to you talk here and kind of frame things up, if I were to say, hey, summarizing what you kind of said, you said, hey, you got to know your goals of your department. What do you want to achieve? You got to come out and look at, hey, what are the types of nozzles, what you want to accomplish, to what hose is actually out there, and then what's your budget. So if you would like to summarize and say, hey, these four things, goals, nozzle, hose, and then budget are key, what would be your approach to a department to say, hey, how would I prioritize it? Is it the hose? Is it the nozzle? Is it the budget? What takes priority, and really kind of put a wrap on it? Where would you recommend they go?
That's great. I would say that you really need to try it out. You really need to try out kind of everything. Try it and see, how does it actually work for your department? Once you get the goal that you're trying to accomplish, at that point in time, get some hose, get some nozzles, play around with it, bring in the experts, bring in the hose expert, bring in the nozzle expert, and see what does that actually entail, and what is it. Does it look good? Does it look bad? You may be seeing things out on social media that you have to do it one way, whereas it may not work for your department. So you have to be open-minded as well. And nothing's perfect. So, and it may not turn out the way you want, but those are things that you really and then when you're phasing it in, can you actually look at, buying nozzles first or buying hose first? And how does that look? So there's another option for you. So you may go hose, and if you go fixed orifice, every company, every nozzle manufacturer makes a fixed orifice nozzle, so you can just change the baffle out, make it simple, and then change it later on to that lower pressure if you were buying hose first, or vice versa. You can do it with the nozzles and then go to the hose.
So where do I go to find this stuff out, David? I know I could probably contact you, but who else can I get a hold of to learn about this nozzle technology and matching hoses?
So again, go back to the manufacturer of the nozzles. You've got three big companies: Elkhart, TFT, Akron. You've got, from a hose standpoint, you've got Key, All American, Fire Equip. There's a lot of those out there. They may be one more popular than the other in your area, but definitely they also use their websites. Use the information that's on their websites that's there. Some of them have cool, some on the hose websites, you'll see what is the coefficient. People think coefficient, they think, 15.5 or whatever they think the coefficient may be, but really the coefficient ultimately depends on the volume of water that you're flowing. So, because it could range from, if you're trying to flow 150 gallons a minute to 200 gallons a minute, it's going to be a big change depending on then if you've got an 1.5-inch hose, 1.75-inch hose, or a 1.88 inch 3/4 hose.
Well, and from an instrumentation standpoint, a lot of departments do have some of these things already. They may have a flow meter. They may have certain, line gauges. Now, the accuracy of those, it's really important. Our data is only as good as our instrumentation that we're using. So definitely touch base with your manufacturer if you have an older flow meter and you're not sure if it's calibrated right or not. That's what we're here for, and we want to help you get the right data the first time in the field, so you aren't having to do it twice or wondering, is this even right, and wasting time and water, I guess. But yeah, talk to your manufacturers on that. But yeah, that's really good stuff, David. I thank you very much. Is there anything else that you want to hit on before we wrap up today? I know that was a lot of really good information.
Yeah, I mean, I could talk for days on this stuff. So sorry, hopefully I didn't bore you guys to death. But we could get into formulas if you guys want later on. Pump discharge pressure. What is that?
It's Friday. It's Friday.
Oh, okay. All right. But yeah, if you don't have any other questions, I'm happy to answer some. But if not, I'm here.
Yeah.
Well, David, I just want to say thank you for coming on today and being a part of the jump seat with John and I. I think if they want to if anybody watching wants to get a hold of you, they can go to akronbrass.com, look for yourself or really any of the regional sales managers in their area. And I think, am I correct? They would all be willing to come out and help those departments match the nozzles, play with nozzles, even bring flow meters and stuff out. Is that right?
Absolutely. So either, call us, we'll send it to you, or we will come in and actually help you conduct your evaluation and give you some pointers to help do that. So look at our website. We've got, you can access it and see where your area is at, and then it'll, the drop down by rep.
Well, very good. Thanks again, David, for coming out and joining us in the jump seat. And for those that maybe have comments or whatever, feel free to put them in there in the comment box, and we can definitely address those later on. If you have trouble getting a hold of us, we're always available there on our social pages and whatnot for IDEX Fire and Safety as well as Akron Brass. So, so I hope everybody has a good weekend. I did want to also just do a quick spotlight for next Friday. We're going to be hosting Dr. Rich Gasaway, Fire Chief, retired and founder, principal of situationalawarenessmatters.com. Dr. Gasaway is a renowned speaker, author, blogger, podcaster, and researcher, as well as a consultant. He is the founder and principal of situationalawarenessmatters.com, which helps first responders improve safety by ensuring their members understand how to deal and maintain situational awareness while working in high stress, high consequence, time compressed environments. I've actually got to hear him speak before. It's incredible. So feel free to check in midweek. You may see a little snippet, but next Friday we'll be doing things live again in the jump seat. So
John, I'm actually looking forward to having Chief Gasaway here. I think that I have not heard him speak, so I think it's exciting. I think it's gonna be a great guest. So if you guys are listening here live, I know we got a whole bunch of people I can see online right now. Hey, thanks for joining us and tuning in today, but make sure you don't miss next week. I think it's gonna be great having him here, and share the news with your friends. Click share on this event, as you'll see it pop up here in the next couple of days. Thanks for tuning in. You can find us and share this through Facebook, on YouTube. We also are on the IDEX Fire and Safety blog, as well as we've got our own webpage up under IDEX Fire and Safety. So IDEX Fire and Safety /the-Jumpseat. Come check us out. You'll see future episodes and where we're actually going to be planning on being. Thanks again to David Hradek and John. It's always great being on here with you. Enjoy co-hosting with you on a weekly basis. Thanks for hanging out in the jump seat with us all today, and hope you guys have a great weekend.
Have a great weekend, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.